Well, hello, my dear sisters and brothers in the Dharma. Here I am with Norma Levine in England, UK. And I'm sure you all know already Norma Levine for her brilliant work, but I will introduce in the case you are seeing for the first time. So, Norma Levine has published 6 books on Buddhist themes. And she has organized a pilgrimage to Mount Kailash in the Western Tibet and the hidden land of Pemako in Arunachal Pradesh. And she's written for some of the major London newspapers, The Observer, The Times, and The Telegraph. So she also has a Master Philosophy in Drama and Literature from the University of Toronto and completed a PhD thesis before escaping academic life to live in the book town of Hay-on-Wye.
Hay-on-Wye.
On the Welsh borders, famous for the International Literary Festival. She used to divide her time between UK and India, and now
I live in Malvern, which is in Worcestershire. Actually, it's not very far away from Hay, and I spend my time writing and walking the hills with my dog Tara, who is quite famous on Facebook for her photographs and her incredible style. She's a lurcher and a diva, I have to say. So that's my contribution. And over to you.
I'm very blessed to be here with Norma Levine
and Naomi. You can call me
Naomi now. Mm-hmm. Naomi Levine. And we were going to talk this interview I was quite eagerly waiting for. First, I was eagerly waiting to meet Naomi and to do this interview to her that is going to be based mostly in one of her books that is the Chronicles of Love and Death, her years with the lost spiritual king of Bhutan. Naomi, please, I would like to ask you why you decide to write this book. This is the first one. Why did you decide to write this book and put in words and share with everybody your love story or Vajra love with with the Shabdrung, let's say, with the spiritual king of Bhutan, the Shabdrung?
Yes, it's a very interesting question actually, because I had. It was the most extraordinary part of my life, and it was something that it took me many years. In fact, it took me 20 years to absorb what had happened and to come to terms with what had happened, because it was not the usual. It was not the usual kind of life story. And in fact, right at the beginning of the book, I say, so that people don't get the wrong idea, I say, yeah, it's easy. It's a book that's easy to get lost in, because it's so unusual, and you wonder kind of whether I'm making it up or not, really, because it's not your average love story. So I have put this for the reader's illumination right at the beginning, and I'll just read it to you as I have written it. This is a true story of a spiritual journey and the incredible but all too human love between a Western woman and a high reincarnate lama, the spiritual king of Bhutan. It is neither biography nor autobiography. It is a play that arose and disappeared like an illusion, a magical display of comedy and tragedy, history, romance, and transcendence. So it took me 20 years, as I started out saying, it took me 20 years before I wrote the book. After it had happened, that episode happened, it took me 20 years before I could see myself as a character in a play. I didn't want to be so deeply attached to it that that it wouldn't come across correctly. So I had to get to the point where I was another character, and I felt like I was walking onto the stage without knowing why I was there, what part I was playing, and what the lines were. It was as if I had just walked on and then walked off again at the end.
Yeah.
So why did it take me so long to write that book? Because I couldn't put the pieces together. I just couldn't put them together. There were so many different pieces, like a jigsaw, that I didn't know. And then finally, you know what dawned on me? This was something that I hadn't experienced before. He, the Shabdrung, whom I felt very strongly about, both positively and negatively, after our journey together was over, I suddenly understood that he had given me a story, and I was a writer, and that was his gift to me. He gave me the most incredible story. And then when I saw that, I thought, this is meant to be written. And so I went ahead and wrote it, and then I started to think, ooh, there's just a bit, maybe too much this and that in here, particularly descriptions of sexual relationships and graphically described, and I thought, I better edit this out. And it took me a long time. I had various people reading it, and they made suggestions, and most of them I followed and edited out, and I had an agent at the time who read it, and so I edited and edited and edited. And they say that books aren't written, they are edited. And that's truly what happened with this book, but there's still a lot of meat in there.
Still has a lot of writings here, and very, very deep ones, I must confess you. I was fascinated. Thank you so much for explaining the reason why you decide to put this in words, your story, and why it took you so long to put it in words. And all these editions, that's just like life itself, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
We spend our time editing and editing and editing, and in the end,
that's right. That's right. In the end, you end up with something that should make sense. But you know, it's up to the reader to decide. I didn't write it for a specific audience, to tell you the truth. I thought the Tibetans aren't going to read this because why would they be interested in a Western woman, you know, writing? And at that time, it was quite a while ago. It was about 2011 before it was published. So I thought Tibetans aren't going to read it. The Bhutanese are going to read it, but they're not going to like it. So I thought the definitely certain segments will not like this. It will probably even get banned. And then the Westerners might think that it's not quite feminist enough.
Westerns, I think they can learn a lot from your book. I talk really honestly. I think Westerns, and especially the female, they can learn a lot from your book. I would like to start by this part. I would like if you could kindly clear us about this. So you said, I will read Naomi phrase. She said, in my heart, I knew I was a Buddhist, but what did all these ceremonies mean? What is an empowerment, and who is Karmapa? And why should I go? I asked Jongon Control, the young incarnate Lama accompanying the Karmapa. You don't need to understand it, he replied, beaming with a great compassion. Just go. Can you kindly please?
Well, I have to put that in the right context.
Yes.
Because this comes in the first, like in the introduction to the book. And this is when I met the 16th Karmapa.
Yes.
And thanks to that, and he performed the black hat ceremony in a room that was a great deal smaller than the sitting room that I'm sitting in now, and a farmhouse in Wales, actually. And I'd only just met the Dharma through meeting with Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche at Sameling. So I was very, very new in the Dharma. And this is not from the section where I had met the Shabdrung.
Yeah.
And I hadn't gone to 16th Karmapa, although I didn't know it. I felt it, that I was in the presence of a being who was beyond words, beyond concepts.
Yes.
And when he did the crown ceremony, I was just overtaken by his incredible presence. So not understanding that this was actually probably a pointing out instruction, because I knew nothing. I mean, believe me, I knew nothing. And I only knew what I felt. Yeah. And I felt that I had to go and meet the Karmapa at his monastery in Sikkim. So that's how the journey started, in which I went by bus at a certain time when you could still travel to India by bus, which was about 79. I had met the Karmapa in 76, and in 79 I was on a bus with my then partner, and we were heading off to India to meet the Karmapa in Sikkim. So that's how I started the book, and I ended up, rather than going to see the Karmapa, suddenly I was in Dharamsala. There was no more money. I got a letter from the abbot of Sameling, Akon Rinpoche, that I should go and see the Tai Situ Rinpoche. So my hair stood up on end, as they describe it in some of those famous, electric moments of hearing the Guru's name. I literally jumped on the next bus, went to beer. And anyway, it's quite a long story, but there I did meet my Guru, Tai Situ, and it was very clear from the beginning that he was my Guru. So everything that happened, and then I went back, settled all my affairs in Hay-on-Wye. I had a shop, I had a beautiful showman's wagon that was worth a lot of money, and I sold everything, packed up my dog, who was also another gorgeous lurcher, just like Tara is, and ended up with a dog and a trunk, with going to Shabdrung to live there at Shabdrung when it was still under construction. So I spent quite a few years doing some very, let's say, strong purification practices. In the midst of doing that very strict purification practice, and during one of the breaks in between, suddenly Ngawang Jigme, the spiritual king of Bhutan, pulled up in a jeep with a couple of drivers smoking beedies and inquired about me, and was directed to a house on the hillside where I had just finished doing nunez. So that's how we met. Actually, we met previous in Mandi. Previous to that, we met in Mandi at Bijay Palace. But so that's how it all started. Yes, it took me quite a long time to understand that actually he was a Mahasiddha, because that word wasn't even in, particularly in my vocabulary. I was used to seeing lamas sitting on thrones, or accustomed to, let's say. I had become accustomed to seeing that. Yeah. And the sound of jowlings and the announcement that the master is about to enter, and the whole thing like that. I was a conventional Buddhist in the sense that anybody would be at that. So it was something very unusual. It was unorthodox behavior, let's call it. It was untraditional. It was confusing. It was at times very upsetting. It wasn't anything that you could even prepare for.
Yes.
Like you say, you need preparation. What preparation is there to meet somebody
Yeah.
who was so out of the box
Yeah.
as he was?
And unpredictable.
And unpredictable.
Totally unpredictable.
Totally unpredictable.
How do you deal with that?
How do you deal with that? And I already had a guru. My guru was Tai Situ. My guru was, you know, I was at that time very much in love with my guru. I was at the honeymoon period, and I felt so strongly. It's not, I have to add, this is not really truly devotion, but it is a stage. It is a first stage in getting, you know, to the point of understanding what is actually guru devotion. So that's where I was when I met the exiled spiritual king of Bhutan, who was living in Mandi in a sort of like a tumble down British colonial house that the Dalai Lama had stayed in, and it was called BJ Palace. Yeah. And then from that sort of initial meeting and having a drink together, and from the time that he, you know, first looked at me and said, you know, why did it take you so long to get here? As if he was, as if he was expecting, you know, as if we had an arrangement. Yeah. And so then we ended up going out to dinner, and well, you know, it was. We decided to be friends. We wrote letters, and then he came to Shabdrung at that point afterwards, and we carried on from there, and it was very tumultuous. It was a tumultuous relationship.
When you say that was what I was seeking, the secret method that transformed passion into compassion and wisdom, the alchemy of enlightenment, sacred love.
That's what I was looking for.
What is it? What do you mean with sacred love?
I mean, it's basically it's basically karma mudra. That's what it is. And sacred love is love that is not defined by passion. Yeah. It's not brought on by passion. It's a form of meditation that is very secret. And particularly the woman's role in it is even more secret, because there are very few women who have received the teaching to practice it, and I was hoping to find that person who would become my consort, or I would become his consort. That's sacred love. That's sacred love. It's beyond lust. Yeah, it's beyond that, and yet there I was with a person who was extremely passionate. And intense. So I felt that it wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I liked him, and I thought, you need a friend. That's what I thought. You need a friend. You're lonely. You need a friend, and I'm happy to be your friend. You know, that's how I thought of him in the first instance.
Very good. Yes, and that kind of thought took you to sacred love.
I think so. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it did, because it was based on compassion. My love was based on compassion. I knew a bit about his history, and I knew that it was very, very dark, and he had been more or less abandoned by his well, I'll put it this way, I'll put it another way. I used to say to him, you're like a king without a country, You're like a general without an army, and you're like somebody who has lost everything, and you're putting all your energy into love, into finding a companion who can understand you. You're putting all your energy into me, and I think you should be putting it somewhere else. That's the energy I'm experiencing, you know?
I understand. So this is a kind of, this sacred love, this karma mudra, it's very secret, it's very particular. Not everybody is ready, and I think not everybody, it's just a few people really are ready. It's just for a very, very few.
Tendril is actually what is karma. I've never put myself in that category, but nonetheless, I was looking for that, and I don't think I understood how special it was, how special karma mudra was, because it does require an enormous amount of preparation and practice. And I was very new in the Dharma. I was not. I was only a few years. I'd only been a few years in the Dharma since meeting the 16th Karmapa, and then the Taisitu, and so on. And I had been doing, pretty strict practices, but he didn't quite fit the category that I had in mind, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
I thought that, I didn't think that I was his consort, or that he was my consort. I thought he was a friend and a very unusual person, and sometimes very badly behaved, particularly and he drank whiskey, and he encouraged us to drink. He played cards.
Good.
He played cards wherever he could, and made us all place bets, a certain amount of money, and he would always win. And I thought that he was very strange, very, very strange, but interesting. He was always interesting. It was like there was always something happening around him, some drama. He had a lot of drama. And I was like thinking, well, first I actually was, from my family, I carried a certain amount of trauma. Yeah. And then I went into, as it turned out, drama in my studies in university. I went into drama, and then I got into Buddhism, and I went into karma. And then I got into Dharma, and it was a kind of like a funny way of describing my life, but I thought that's the drama of my life. This man is the drama. He was a drama king in many ways. There was always something going on around him, and he created drama. That's the magical display. Yeah, the magical display.
That's the magical display. It's just created spontaneously. Yeah. It spontaneously arises.
Yeah, and he would be provocative. Yes. He would, from being very nice, he would be very angry and start shouting and throwing things in the air and stomping out. And, and then you just think, well, what's going on here? Yeah. But, don't forget, I had a fairly conventional mindset. Yeah. So I had nothing to compare this to. Nobody had ever behaved like that in my relationships. Yeah. And he just went for it. Yeah. It was like, what am I doing here? what am I doing here? And it immediately we started to bond through the passion part of love. And it becomes love, it becomes attachment, it becomes, it has its own route that it follows, passion.
Yeah.
And I fell into it, hook, line, and sinker. I fell in love with him. First, he fell in love with me, proposed to me. I sort of thought, is this, how seriously should I take it? And I was advised to, if it was offered, I should take it seriously. So I got into it. And then I found myself falling in love with him as well. Because if a man wants to hook a woman, it's not that difficult if you do it through passion.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
And that's how he did it. And he also was very charismatic.
Yeah.
He was very charismatic, very strong-willed, very strong. And he took out all that energy on me. Yeah, so I learned a great deal in that time, but I never thought of him as my guru.
Yeah.
You see, I had a guru, that was Taisitu. I was in love with my guru. It was like why would I have another guru, And he, I think, wanted to be my guru. He wanted that acknowledgement of being my guru. And what can I say?
He was.
He was, but I couldn't believe that he was. I couldn't acknowledge that he was.
But it is there. I think it's brilliant because when you find the right concert, it can sometimes not work as a relationship or as a romance, but it works as a brilliant union that never dissolves life after life.
Was able to do what is called the consort practice, Tsalung Tigle. He was able to do that. And he seemed to do it. He of course seemed to. He did it with me several times. Not all the time, of course. Most of the time it was lust and passion and love and attachment. But when he did the Tsalung with me, I understood what it was, what Tsalung Tigle was, what Karma Mudra was, what consort practice was. I understood it, even though I was not, I hadn't been taught how to do it.
Yeah.
On my side, I saw that he was doing it because I looked at him and I saw that he was in meditation.
Yeah.
And that I could feel the energy in his body going upward and taking my energy with it as well. So on one level, it worked because of his power. And on the relationship level, where you are a man, when you have, let's say, passionate sex, you're not like that. You're a man and a woman in bed together, enjoying the pleasure of the senses.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I had both, but mostly it was passion orientated, and occasionally when he had to do it for some reason, and he did it for some reason, I know the reasons, he practiced Tsalung with me as his consort, and he was my consort. I mean,
that's a big point.
That I also felt that I was that he was my consort.
Yeah,
because there were certain occasions that arose where I had something to say to him, as you recalled, when we were in the water.
Yes.
And perhaps you can describe that.
Yes. I have to go to the page. I have pointed here because it was amazing. There is, but we can explain and go deeper in that, because that was what I called, and what I think we both know. It's like a pit instruction. You just were there teaching the Shabdrung to swim. You were there in the sea, and totally spontaneously from your mind came something that was amazing, and it was a great teaching for him.
I knew who he was.
Yeah.
But being in a relationship with such a person is, sometimes you see, as someone described it, the feet of clay.
Yeah.
You see all the little things that you only see in an ordinary relationship with a person, with a human being. We are human beings. We're in a human body. He was in a human body. And that, and there were characteristics and personality traits and so on and so forth that didn't seem to merge with my idea of a great Lama. But nonetheless, he was. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, but the swimming thing, I think we should put into the context of the fact that when he was at a certain age, I think it was about 11, in a previous lifetime, not this lifetime, a previous lifetime, he had been persecuted by the political powers in Bhutan.
Yes.
And they tied him up in a sack and threw the sack over a cliff, and it landed in the water. And he remembered this.
Yeah.
So he remembered drowning.
Yeah. It's like a trauma.
It's a trauma.
Yeah, it
was a trauma. So that's why he was afraid of water.
He was afraid of water.
And also I have to add to this is that when they found his body at that point, it was upstream of where he had been thrown in. So in other words, it was very unusual to find that a body goes upstream rather than downstream. Yeah. So that was a sign of his enlightenment, I would say, accomplishment. Yeah. So he was afraid of water. So when he got into the ocean, and there's always waves in the ocean, there's always waves, he started fighting with the waves, pounding the waves as if he was going to overcome the waves. Yeah. And I said,
it was very rooted in his mind.
Yeah, very rooted in his mind to fight.
Yeah.
To fight.
Warrior.
A warrior. He was a warrior. Yeah. I said, that's not what you do when you meet up with waves. It's like meditation. You go with it. You flow with it. You don't fight against it. You just go with it and merge with it. Yeah. The waves and the thoughts, it's like the same thing. It's the mind.
Yeah.
And he took it. Yes. And that was my kind of way of saying to him, look, I know it's happened to you, but you have to relax if you're going to swim. You just have to relax and move with the waves.
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow. Well, actually, to be honest, he never did learn to swim. But we had a lot of fun in the water.
See?
We had a lot of fun in various kinds of water. No, I mean like
the sea,
the water in the pool. In the pool near Shabdrung. We had lots of fun. Yeah.
But this is precisely what I would like to bring up, is this relationship. You were not there only to serve.
Well, it's a funny story. Yeah,
please.
We were in a hotel room together.
Yeah.
And suddenly he wakes me up and says, "I'm thirsty. Get me some water." And I sort of like go,
Yeah.
Well, okay. And I got up and I brought him a glass of water. I said, "Don't ever ask me to do this again.
Yeah.
I am not your servant. Yeah. Don't ever ask me again. I'll do it this time, but not again." And then there was another episode where he said to me, we were trudging over the hills at Shabdrung, getting to the bus stop. And he said, carry my bag. I said, no, you carry it yourself. You're a man. It's heavy. I don't want to. I have my own bag. You carry it yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that's my, that was my spontaneous way of saying, look, I mean, don't treat me like that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not up for it.
Yeah. Like love, sacred love is not this, pick my bags. Maybe that was also a test.
Oh, I'm sure it was. All along he was trying to see how far he could go.
Yeah.
How far he could go to kind of like overpower. I fight.
Yeah.
It makes it worse.
Yeah.
Just like the waves.
Yes, exactly. Just go with the flow.
Just go and let it be.
Yeah.
Let it be, and you won't feel so much pain.
Yeah. And that's how you were able to deal with the Mahasiddha.
It was the only way.
Yeah. Fighting back sometimes.
Yeah.
Other times go with the flow.
Yeah. It was a great teaching. It's picturesque, and we like the picturesque side of everything.
Yeah.
A dakini, according to the Hindu tradition,
Indian tantric
tradition, can also be, and Shabdrung told me this directly. He said it can be a
witch.
A witch, or like a flesh eating kind of what do you call it? A flesh eating woman. In other words, like a cannibal.
Yeah.
Like a cannibal. Yeah. It's not always a pretty lady in a bikini.
Yeah.
And it's a it's a term that can be negative or can be looking for Tilopa, and an old hag appeared in front of him and cackled.
Yeah.
And he said, do you know the words or the meaning? It was something like that.
Yeah.
She was not a beautiful woman. Yeah. She was a dakini who appeared in a very
manifested,
displayed all the ugliness. Women are the source of wisdom.
Yeah,
we know that. We're not always in our deepest nature of mind.
Yeah,
but we do have an ability. I'm saying we. I mean all women. We do have an ability to be spontaneously right on the spot.
Yeah.
Absolutely pin it down.
Yeah.
And that's a characteristic of many of the women who appear in the texts. In the teachings. Yeah, in the teaching.
That's the dakini aspect.
I would say that women have the ability, the dakini ability.
Dakini mind.
The dakini mind naturally, and sometimes it comes out, and sometimes it doesn't at all. So it really depends on causes and conditions and karma and so on and so forth. All that we know about. So we have that potentiality. Yeah, it's a potentiality, whether it's drawn out or not. It's up to us actually whether we have that manifested or not. Shabdrung used to tell me. I have to bring him in somewhere.
Yeah.
He used to tell me that, if somebody can go outside on the balcony and pee, and then withdraw the pee back into his penis. Now, he said that's the sign of being able to do the tsalung. He said, do you know many people who can do that?
No.
I said, no, I don't think I do, actually. I've never seen anyone do it. When I see a man peeing, it's not what I see.
So
it was like, I learned something, I learned something. Pick up a prostitute who wouldn't necessarily know anything about the Dharma, but she was the right woman.
Yeah.
And maybe she was she could still be a prostitute and be the right woman.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to be in the Dharma, so-called in the Dharma.
Yeah.
But she could have been, the most compassionate woman.
That's the point.
A prostitute can be a compassionate woman.
It's like a mother.
It's like a mother.
Like a mother.
So there you go. Everything is like a sort of a crumbling of all our expectations, of all our concepts. And being with the Shabdrung, my concepts started to crumble, disintegrate, and turn into a pile of dust, because I looked at it. Sometimes it was like this, sometimes it was like that. I had to drop.
Yeah.
I realized I had to drop all my concepts. And he once said to me, "You don't love me, you love the Dharma." And I just paused and I thought, you're right. I love you because I think you are representative of the Dharma. You are a Dharma person. That's why I love you. I don't actually love you for yourself, because I find yourself a little bit weird to say the least, and not very polite, not well-mannered, not the sort of person I would be proud to hang on the arm of and walk into, Buckingham Palace, for example. He didn't have the attributes of a gentleman. Yeah. That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I was what I was. And so then I realized that if I'm going to be with this man, I'm just going to have to drop all my ideas and just let go of it all and let it all happen.
And that is the hardest part. Again, you have to be yourself.
Yeah. So, we had that kind of relationship. And I think if you read the book, you understand it. Yeah. If you don't read the book, you will have all sorts of maybe unanswered questions. But I think Sonia has brought out many important points in this interview, and she has said many interesting things to me that I didn't even pick up on myself.
No. It's because, I was really overwhelmed with this. I understand very well. I put myself in your shoes when I was reading. That's why it took me a while. It was like if I was studying your book, analyzing the personalities, the circumstances and everything, like going deeper.
Look, let's say there's a lot of explosive ingredients hidden inside that relationship.
Yeah.
And
But I think the most beautiful is that you see his true colors. You could see him as he was.
I saw him as he was. I respected him really because I knew that he had been deeply traumatized by the several times that he had been assassinated in his previous lifetimes. And I never really blamed him for that. Yeah. I went in to understand, I wanted to understand the history of Bhutan, the political history of Bhutan. And I picked up a book, Michael Aris's book, The History of Bhutan.
There are references there.
And I began to understand what it actually was, what Bhutan was. And it was how it became a hereditary monarchy from being a spiritual kingship, which the first Shabdrung had created through his own power, and became famous for manifesting apparitions in the battlefield when Bhutan was being attacked by the Tibetans under the fifth Dalai Lama, or let's say during the time of the fifth Dalai Lama. He could do that. He could frighten the whole army just by sitting in his cave and manifesting grotesque apparitions that drove them away. So he was not an ordinary guy. His lineage was not an ordinary lineage. And I was suddenly thrust into something that was at a certain time, in a certain place, it was unfolding in front of me just the way a film unfolds when you sit in your seat and watch it. But you find that you're one of the characters in the film, and it has a beginning and it has an end, and that's the way it's constructed: a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a story in itself, and after that, it's gone. It's gone. But what remains is the fact that I'm on very, very good terms with his Yangtze, with the Yangtze Shabdrung, who is now living in Bhutan. He was born in Bhutan. He was recognized by the 17th Karmapa, which makes him super kosher, and the oracle. And he was, he's no longer under house arrest as he was before. He's gaining his freedom, and I'm allowed to go there and to have this reconnection, which has never gone away, actually. It has never gone away, although he passed away fairly young, and it was not because he was assassinated, it was because he had cancer. So he had a normal death. And that was the first time for a very long time. So he was reborn. He was not traumatized. It was the period, I think, of that lifetime was his time to work out his traumas and obstructions and so on, because he had some karma left over as well to get over. And I think that last lifetime that I was with him was that time. So it continues in another lifetime.
Yeah, but it's pretty funny, and I would like to just, I don't know, maybe you want to finish the interview, but I will have just two more things that I think it's important to go, because it's beautiful in the story, and because it's important for us to understand. When you have sacred love, or when you are in this relationship, like you said, love and death, this is so, overwhelming, like mind-blowing, this kind of relationship. And then this man, he passed away so young.
Something is that I went 3 years after he had passed away, literally passed away. He was still sitting in meditation. They brought him to from Calcutta. What am I thinking of? They brought him. They brought him from Calcutta to where their monastery is in Kalimpong, where his monastery was in Kalimpong, the Shabdrungs, right on the border of Bhutan. And he when I went there, I was told that I should go there. So I went and I saw him. He hadn't been put in a stupa yet, so it was very clear. I walked in. I couldn't take a photo. I walked into the cubicle where he was sitting, and although his head was just slightly bent to the side, he was sitting. They hadn't cut him. They hadn't done any autopsy, nothing like that. They hadn't put any preservative. He was still sitting, and I went inside and I sniffed the air, and there was a fragrance. And I then understood what the phrase meant, the odor of sanctity. This is it. And I sat there and sat there and sat there all day in front of the kudung, and some Bhutanese people came to honor him, to pay their respects, and they said, "Who are you?" They, in conversation, you know, and I said, "Well, I was the, you know, the companion, the consort of the Shabdrung who is sitting here in meditation. That's why I'm here." And they were so overwhelmed that a Western woman could be there and could say that.
Yes, absolutely.
And there was no feeling of boastfulness or anything. I'm here because I knew this man. But you know what?
Yeah.
He didn't look the same. And he didn't look like the young man that I was with at all.
Yeah.
He looked like in the course of his death, he had become the Shabdrung, the real Shabdrung, who he really was. He had become that I had never seen before. So
that's incredible. That's incredible. I don't have much to ask except about his lineage, but maybe that's.
Well,
I would like to go into a bit into his lineage because, you know, I think this is very deep, and to be a spiritual king is very different than to be, you know, to have a kingdom like the actual kingdom of Bhutan. To be a spiritual king is very different, in my humble opinion.
Of course,
but. And I would like to know a bit about his lineage. I only have been to Bhutan. I realize there is a deep respect for Shabdrung. Deep.
Very deep.
Very deep. So I would like to ask you, since I have this opportunity to be in front of you, if you are willing to just talk a bit about the Shabdrung lineage.
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, I hope I don't make too many mistakes, that's all. It's just the Shabdrung lineage. He was born the Ngawang Namgyal, who was from the White Lotus, Pemako and Sampagyare. That's what it was. Yeah, Pemako was his predecessor. Okay, the one that came before. Pemako is a Drupa Kagyu, very, very famous. I don't know, more than a lama. I mean, he was a very famous Siddha. Yeah. And before that, there was Sampagyare, which means shit and food is the same. So in other words, same taste.
Yeah.
Okay? So he had inherited from both great lineages, and when he was born in Tibet, there was a contest with another lama, another family, who was an important family. And his family was also an important family. So they wanted, his family, Shabdrung's family, had, Shabdrung's lineage, I should say, had the bone of Sampagyare, which came out of his remains. It was, I saw it, it was like an Atsuki carving. It was incredible. It was so fine. Because he had that, and he wanted to protect it, he realized that if he stayed in Tibet, it could be taken away from him. So the story goes, it almost sounds like, sounds like a myth, but the story goes that he flew on the back of a raven with his precious treasure to Bhutan. And there he tamed the very wild tribal people of Bhutan who were, I don't know if you can call them Buddhist. I'm not sure. They were tribal people, you know, without anything, without any structure. I think he tamed them. He he through the force of his great power, you know, he was able to. He was what do they call it? A Renaissance man, a man of many parts. He could do many things.
Yeah.
There's a better word for it than that people use these days, and I'm trying to think of it. It's not coming.
I understand.
You understand what
we
I'm
understand
saying?
the point. Yes.
He was multifaceted. Not only was he a great adept, a great Mahasiddha, who could overcome enemies, but he was an architect. He designed monasteries. He was a sculptor. He could make statues, and he was an artist. He was really a genuine artist, and he entertained. There were some Jesuits who came, some Jesuit priests who came there from Rome to check him out because he was famous.
Yeah.
And they had nothing but good to say about him, about his generosity, about his abilities, and about his kingdom that he had created. They had only the greatest respect for him. So when he saw that it was time for him to die, he went into meditation. Some years passed, and he was still in meditation, and then more years passed, and he was still in meditation. It wasn't for many years that they actually opened the door and disturbed the body.
Yes.
So when they did that, 3 lights went out to different places. In other words, he was reincarnating in body, speech, mind in 3 different places. The body emanation was sort of passed over because I don't think he was even recognized. He was in Sikkim, but the speech and mind incarnations were recognized. And then slowly the story came out. They held the story back for 50 years because they knew that when the Shabdrung goes, what the hell is going to happen now? You know, who's going to take his place?
Who's going to take his place?
And who is going to, so they kept it a secret for quite a long, 50 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Then when the next one was recognized, he had a child who was somewhat lame. I think his child was lame. He was not born properly. He had some condition that he was born with. So so it wasn't going to be passed on to him. And it was never really properly acknowledged because was he a monk or not? You know, it was sort of a little bit tenuous, the whole thing. So the whole thing became chaotic again. And then he was, during the time of the British were there, and they Bhutan was somehow part of their imperial assets.
Yes.
And they were trying to create some kind of ongoing stability in one of their regions. That was their main concern. So they allowed the Punlap of Tongsa, who was one of the main tribal chieftains in the country, to go as far as enthroning him as the king of Bhutan. Nonetheless, the current Shabdrung was still around, and he was recognized, but he didn't have that position anymore because it had turned into a hereditary monarchy. So he was no longer really recognized as a spiritual king, but he was a threat to the monarchy. And so it was more like it was the second generation of a king. I think he was called Jigme something or other. They were all called Jigmes. And he said something like, the equivalent of, will someone rid me of this troublesome priest? In other words, that was what how Thomas à Becket died. It's a quotation from another English historical death. And so he was dispatched without the king taking any credit for the deed. He was dispatched, as some say that a kata was shoved down his throat, which was the usual way. They prostrate first and then they shove the kata down the throat to suffocate him. So that's what happened to him. After that, they kept on, when he kept on reincarnating, it was very dangerous to recognize him. So eventually he had to leave Bhutan, and it was during the border war with China, between China and Bhutan, that he managed to escape. So he received some teachings there, and then he was taken to Tsopema, and he was placed there with bodyguards. And the Indian government took responsibility. In fact, he was then just considered the third most important VIP in India, next to the president, and the Dalai Lama. He was the third one. So they supported him. He said, I want my freedom. He said to the Indian government, I want my freedom. I'm the third most important person. I still am a VIP. I still want my salary, and I want my freedom. And they gave it to him. Finally, that he could leave. He could leave the BJ Palace where he was being detained. He could, take a jeep. He could have a driver. He could still have his salary. They kept him okay. He had no problems with India, but he did have one important meeting with the king of Bhutan. Which
also
he told
you have in the book,
which was very significant, and he told me about India set up a meeting at one of their 5-star hotels. He was invited to go to meet the king of Bhutan. So King of Bhutan said to him, he's telling me this, prove to me that you're the real Shabdrung, the real incarnation of the Shabdrung. And he lit up a cigarette, and he never smoked. I have never seen him smoke. He blew the smoke in the face of the king, and he said, I don't have to prove anything to you. Why should I have to prove anything to you? You can do your research and find out for yourself, and when you find out, come back to me. And he walked out of the room. Finito. Mahasiddha, right to the end. Didn't follow the prescriptions that were laid down at all.
It's not possible.
No. So that's the end of my story. And
I'm very grateful because it was important to talk a bit about Shabdrung. Just to say that Shabdrung, he had a lineage that was highly important in Bhutan and very important for the country, let's say so. But the country was not able to follow the lineage through the spiritual king, but it had another kind of monarchy that's still there.
I only want to contribute that much to it, and I think I have done, the job, and I think I put it out there, and it's important to know. That's all, that this is what happened to the spiritual kingdom of Bhutan. That was the whole thing. So he's there, and I have the greatest joy in thinking that I'm going to see him again. And I also think that he is going to manifest in this lifetime. Okay?
Yeah. So thank you. I just want to thank you really, Naomi, for giving this interview. I deeply, deeply appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for your kindness and generosity and giving your time. So thank you, my dears. I really hope you enjoyed this interview. This is just, home self-made thing. I'm not a journalist, but I did it with all my heart. So I dedicate all the merits, if there are any, to this lineage, the Shabdrung lineage. This is my dedications for the maintaining and growing of Shabdrung.
Dedication to the Shabdrungs of Bhutan and the restoration of their lineage.
So the Shabdrungs and the restoration of the lineage, and may you be there with the Yangtze soon.
Thank you.
Thank you from my heart.